Kia ora, Stacey. It's great to meet you. And you've been nominated for the 2020 Book Awards for Children and Adults. And I'm going to read it because the title of the award for your amazing book, Prince of Ponies, is a long one. And it is called the Wright Family Foundation Esther Glenn Award for Junior Fiction. But we just know it as an award for junior fiction, and we're very excited and hope that you win this because I think it's an awesome story. But first of all, I'll introduce us. These girls are in a book club that we have together, and they just all happen to be from the same school. And who's this?
I'm Hannah.
And
I'm Mira. I'm Aroha. I'm Anan.
And I'm Angie, and we're all at the Kāpiti Libraries, at the Paraparaumu District Libraries, and we have a good time reading.
Well, kia ora, it's lovely to meet you all.
Yeah, we're pretty excited. We were hoping you'd come into the library. Well, you are in the library, which is great. So Stacey's going to tell us a bit about this cool book, and I believe you have some slides.
Yeah.
The book, girls. Ponies. I read this, and it's such an awesome book. I love the way you've brought everything together and had the two time periods. And I believe you'll tell us about this much better than I could, just from having read it.
Well, I don't know. Have you girls read any of my other stories? Are you readers of my books in the past?
I've read quite a lot of the other ones.
Well, I tend to often do dual narratives, which is where you have two stories that weave together. And I'll take a historical storyline based on a true story, and then I'll take a modern day story as well, and I'll put them together. And I think those books you've got on the back wall there behind you, The Princess and the Foal and The Girl Who Rode the Wind, which were both up in the past for book awards with the New Zealand Children and Young Adults Book Awards. They did the same thing. So Prince of Ponies follows in that same format. And it's one I really like because I love going back in time and looking at history. And I always think that when you look at history books, they're written from the point of view of old men, usually, because those are the guys who are writing the history books. But nobody ever sits back and thinks about what was that period of time like through the eyes of a 12-year-old girl. And I think it's really important to revisit historical periods and see them the way that we would have seen them if we were kids at that time, and to empower young women to kind of take history back and look at it through their own eyes. So that's kind of what I do quite often, and certainly with Prince of Ponies, in which there are two storylines. And one is set during World War II, and it's about a girl called Zofia who is trying to save her priceless Polish Arabian colt. And one is in the modern day, with a girl called Mira, and she is a Syrian refugee, and she is living in Berlin, and she has come across this crazy old lady in the woods who has this incredible horse, and they're going to bond, and you'll see the two storylines merge together. And I think I have a bit of a slideshow that probably kind of sets up Prince of Ponies for you. We might go to the first slide of that now if you've got it available. Fantastic. So there's the cover of Prince of Ponies. And as it says on the jacket, war brought them together. Their bond will bring them victory. And I just love this cover shot. This is supposed to be the woods in Poland going down into Romania, because this is where Zofia and her priceless Polish Arabian escape to when the Russians are invading from one side and the Germans are coming from the other. I think if we go to the next slide. So here's a map of Europe during the early stages of World War II. And as you can see, there's a little sign that says, 1st of September 1939, Germany invades Poland. And there's Poland. It's the kind of pinky one in the middle next to the grey of Germany. Now, this is where the start of my historical story is set. And there was a very famous horse stud, and still is a very famous horse stud in Poland, called Janel Podlaski. And this horse stud had the most amazing purebred Arabian horses. And from one side, the Russians were going to invade, and from the other side, the Germans were going to invade, and these horses were in enormous danger. And I think if we go to the next slide, we have a picture of Adolf Hitler Oh no, we have a picture of me.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that is me in the forest in Berlin, because what I also do with all of my books is I go on big research trips. And I go to the places I'm writing about, and I find it's really important for me as an author. I've done it with all of my books. So here I am in the Grunewald outside Berlin, and this is the forest where the modern day story is mostly set. And so it was a fantastic research trip, and I also got to look around Berlin and really get a feel for, I think if we go to the next slide, now we have Hitler. Oh no, we have Taika Waititi. I just thought you should see this because, of course, it seemed like me and Taika were doing a similar thing at the same time. We were both looking back at history and at Hitler, and I love the way he portrays Hitler in Jojo Rabbit. He's fantastic, and his Hitler is quite comedic, obviously, but I think if we go to the next slide, we've finally got the actual Hitler. There we go. Not so much to laugh about there. That is the guy who would try and lead the Nazis to take over the world and World War II. And he was the one who invaded Poland to start the war. So that's where the war starts. It's where the historical story starts. Now, Hitler had a guy who worked for him called Gustav Rau, and he appointed him his master of horses. And this is all the true fact that kind of is the basis of my book. Now, Gustav Rau, his job was to go around Europe and steal all the best horses from around Europe. He cherry-picked the very premier stallions and mares, and he took them to a stud farm, a hidden stud farm that the Germans set up in Hostau, and he was going to breed a master race of super horses. The Nazis were very interested in the idea of bloodlines and of breeding, and they had this whole horrible sense of eugenics where they wanted to create a master race of humans, the Aryan race, that they thought was pure-blooded and everything that you should be, and you had to eliminate bad blood and create this master race. They had the same theory with horses. They were going to create the ultimate war horse. So that's kind of the principle of the historical story of Prince of Ponies. Hitler wants these horses. He sent Gustav Rau out around the world to get them, and one of the horses he wants, Prince, or Mira in the modern day story, he is the horse that Zofia is going to do anything to protect. So I think if we go to our next slide in, these are the horses that the Germans really wanted to get their hands on too. These are Lipizzanas. They were in Vienna, and they were in extreme danger. And there are some amazing stories surrounding these horses. A guy called Alois Podlaski wanted to protect these horses at all costs because they could do incredible things. I think if we go to the next slide here. These are the Lipizzanas of the Haute École. They are capable of these amazing moves called the airs above ground. And their lives were in incredible danger during the war. And so many people risked so much to keep them safe. But alongside these horses, and this is the lesser known story that I probably write about in Prince of Ponies, we have this next breed, if we're in the next slide. And that is the purebred Polish Arabian. They are world famous, and Hitler wanted these horses as well. So these are the horses that are central to my story. They had to be rescued from Poland. They had to get them out. And it's the story of their journey, and it's particularly the story of Zofia's journey with her horse. So that's kind of the historical basis. And then the modern day storyline, as I said, is a Syrian refugee girl who's found herself in Berlin, and she wants desperately to be a world-class show jumper, and she's going to interact with this historical storyline. So that's the basis that I was playing with when I started creating the fictional story of Prince of Ponies. It is based on this historical true story, which it's such fun for me to investigate and research and base my work on that. So that's a quick slideshow of Prince of Ponies.
Oh, lovely. That was fun, wasn't it? Fascinating. Now, Stacey, are you going to read us a bit from your story?
Would you like me to?
We would love to. That would be fantastic.
Sure. Well, I think I will read you a bit from chapter 1, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, get people started.
And chapter 1 is called The Master of Horses. Zofia edged her way down the ladder in total darkness, feeling her way with bare feet from step to step. She had considered turning on the lights, but dismissed the notion as too dangerous. For all she knew, the Colonel was sitting at his desk right now, staring out across the courtyard. And from there he would see the lights glowing in the stable block and know that she was on the move. In the darkness, the ladder wobbled beneath her, making her stomach lurch, but she knew she must be nearly there, only a couple more rungs and then she'd be on ground level. Made it. She felt the cold concrete floor under her feet and paused for a moment to calm her racing heartbeat. And then she continued, reaching out into the pitch black, feeling her way blindly, inching ahead with shuffling tiny steps until her fingertips bumped up against the wall. And from here she had her bearings, and now her hands would serve as her eyes, her fingers creeping like Incy-Wincy Spider along the stones until they touched the rough-hewn wood of the first door. Over the door, footsteps quickening, and then she was touching stone again, repeating the process from one door to another, 1, 2, 3, until at last she'd reached the fourth door. Was she certain she had the right one, or had she miscounted? Yes, he was here. She could hear him on the other side of the door, restless, moving about. Shh, she whispered. It's okay, I'm here now. He didn't like being alone at night. Neither did she. They always stayed together, but tonight the Colonel had forbidden it. He'd taken her aside at dinner, his face very serious. It is important that you stay in the hayloft tonight, he had told her. And when she'd asked him why, he'd simply replied, because we have visitors coming. Visitors. No other explanation than that. The way the Colonel had said the word, letting it hang in the air, was so sinister, she'd known better than to ask anything more. And that evening, after dinner was over, she'd cleaned up the dishes, and after the men had eaten, she'd done as the Colonel had told her and taken herself up the frail wooden ladder that led to the hayloft. That had been hours ago. Midnight had ticked by and the snow kept falling and the visitors hadn't turned up. Jano Pawlowski was almost inaccessible in bad weather, and even in the very best weather it baffled Zofia as to why anyone would be coming all this way. The stud farm and the neighbouring village had no part to play in this war. They could hardly be considered a strategic location for the Germans, who currently occupied Poland. The big main cities, Warsaw and Krakow, were miles to the west, and it was a long and dangerous journey from there in the middle of winter to this tiny village in the wilderness by the Russian border. On a night like this, the visitors must have realised how deadly the roads would be and changed their minds. Otherwise, they would be here already. Alone in the darkness, Zofia had mulled all of this over in her mind. The Colonel's orders made no sense. No one was coming. What was the harm then in her leaving this miserable icebox of scratchy hay and going downstairs? And that was how she found herself wobbling down the ladder and feeling her way in the darkness until she was finally at the fourth door. I'm here, she breathed through the gaps in the wood as she began working the cast iron bolt. Please don't be angry. It was the Colonel who made me stay away from you, but I've come now. She was inside the stall and so completely cloaked in darkness she couldn't see her own hand in front of her face, let alone the shadowy form that moved around her stall, fretting and stamping. Where are you? She hissed. She tried to follow the sound of him as he circled her. He was moving nearer, and instinctively she turned, thinking she was facing him, and then she realised she'd been wrong as he took her by surprise and she felt a hard shove in the small of her back. Hey! The blow pushed her off balance so that she fell forward into the straw on the stable floor. She still couldn't see him in the dark, but she felt his presence standing over her. That's not funny, Zofia hissed. I'm cold and I'm tired and I'm not in the mood for your humour. There was a soft nicker from the horse, and Zofia immediately felt bad for snapping at him. He'd only been playing, and she hadn't meant it. She'd just been caught off guard. I know, she softened her tone. I missed you too. It's freezing in that hayloft. I'm here now. So, then, flashes of light through the window startled the girl and the horse. Headlights were coming down the driveway. In the pitch black, their twin beams pierced off the walls like searchlights, penetrating the bars of the stable block windows, illuminating Prince's stall. Zofia's heart began hammering. The visitors. They were here after all. And I'm not going to tell you what happens next. But those visitors might possibly include Hitler's master of horses.
It was a very raw story at times. Is it difficult to write some of those things? You know, that so that they're not too frightening.
Absolutely, that's a really great question. And particularly with this novel, because 5 million Polish citizens died during the World War II, and Zofia is one of those lucky ones that will survive, and she has an incredible journey ahead of her. But, you know, there are lots of heartbreaking moments, and I had to figure out how to play those on the page in a way that I wasn't sanitizing the story too much for the reader, that they got the full understanding of what was going on. But at the same time, you know, you are writing for middle grade fiction, so it's 8 to 12-year-olds, so you need to not, you know, give people nightmares at night or overwhelm them so much that they can't still follow the narrative. So yeah, I mean, there are a couple of tough moments in the book, and I think it's often about how much you put on the page and how much you leave to the reader's imagination, and that's a decision that you make as a writer. But you also I have a team of editors who will say, I felt like that worked, and, you know, maybe bring that back a bit. And so there are a couple of crucial moments. And there's also the story of Mira, who's this Syrian refugee, when she recounts her journey to get to Berlin. And I found that pretty grueling. And certainly for me as a writer, as I'm working on the text, and particularly if it's scenes that involve animals, I find myself getting really upset, because I think animals are a bit like kids in these situations. They're so powerless, you know, and you're relying on the goodness of others to get you through. And luckily there are some good people out there, and there certainly were during the war, who really risked their lives to save these horses.
Oh, lovely. Thanks for that. Now, these girls are really amazing readers, and they've got a few questions. For you. So who should we start with? Should we start at the end with Hannah? Have you got a question there for Stacey? Do you mind answering some questions?
No, I'd love to answer.
Do you have a favourite book you've written, or the books?
A favourite book that I've written? That is a really tricky question. The book I wrote last year, The Fire Stallion, the one that came just before Prince of Ponies, absolutely one of my favourite books. It won the What Now Children's Choice Book Award, and I was thrilled about that. And for me, that was my favourite research trip too, because I got to go to Iceland, which was spectacular. And those ponies are the most fun ever, because they do this incredible thing called a tolt, which is, it looks a little bit like a trot, but it doesn't feel like a trot at all. It's super smooth. And if you've ever ridden a horse, you know, with a trot, you get bounced up and down and you have to rise to the trot. A tolt, you don't have to rise. And these horses are very ancient bloodlines. They're exactly the same horses the Vikings rode, because they have strict biosecurity laws in Iceland. So they've bred this tolt into them. And it's like you could drink a cup of tea while you're riding a tolt, and you're going as fast as a gallop. It's super swift.
Oh,
so I had an amazing time researching that, and researching Icelandic gods and folklore and things like that in that book. And so that's quite a special one for me.
Mia, did you have a question for Stacey?
How did you get into writing?
Oh, I was super lucky. I really loved writing at school when I was your age, and I think that was when it really kind of started for me. I did a lot of creative writing in my own time and at school, but I never thought it could be a career. I thought, you know, that's just something I love to do, but, you know, that's not a real job. But then when I left school, I became a magazine journalist, and I wrote magazine features, and then I went and worked on a newspaper as a newspaper journalist as well. And I think that's very important to me as a writer now. I have a lot of research skills from that time, and also I learned to meet deadlines and to deliver on time, because I knew that there were people relying on me. And, you know, that's kind of the same thing for me now. You know, still got books have deadlines, and I have to get my manuscript in time to my editor. And so I learned discipline from that, I guess. And I just got super lucky. I wrote a manuscript, and HarperCollins in London liked it, and then I got published, and now I've done 25 novels with them.
That's a lot of books.
Yeah, wow.
That's not including my Mini Winnie books, which are my picture books, which I do with Ruth Paul, who is like one of my best friends, and she's super cool, and she's the illustrator. And Mini Winnie is up for a book award this year as well, which is...
Oh, she's great. I use her in story times.
And I love working with Ruth. They are so much fun to do. We've just done the 3rd one in the series. It's really cool.
Wow. Do you have a question, Araha? Big voice?
Is it true you went to Germany when you wrote Prince of Ponies?
Is it true that I went to Germany to research Prince of Ponies? Yeah, absolutely. So far in researching my books, I've been to Jordan for The Princess and the Foal. I've been to Italy for The Girl Who Rode the Wind. I've been to Spain for The Island of Lost Horses. I've been to Kaikoura when I was researching the Thunderbolt pony. That was amazing. And yes, absolutely, I went to Berlin to research Prince of Ponies, and I spent a lot of time doing stuff that I think whenever anyone goes to Berlin, they will probably do some tourism that is related to World War II. So there's quite a lot, it's quite accessible there, but I spent a lot of time just getting the hang of the city and thinking, if I was the hero of my story, where would I go and how would it work and where would I set the scenes, and just getting a taste for the climate and the trees and the food and all of those things. I think it's quite important to travel for my work.
And
what sort of books do you enjoy reading?
Oh, that's a really good question. What sort of books do I enjoy reading? I obviously have to read quite a lot of history stuff for work, but I read all sorts of books, really. I've been reading a lot lately because I've been doing a podcast series with my friend Nikki Pellegrino, who's also an author, and we do interviews with New Zealand authors. And so one of the people I interviewed recently for my podcast was Damien Wilkins, and his novel Aspiring is up for the young adult section of the New Zealand Children and Young Adult Book Awards, and it's a fantastic book, and I really recommend if anyone gets the chance they should read it. And I just think Damien is a fantastic writer, so it was, that's probably the last novel I read, and I loved it.
Oh, good recommendation, thank you. They're always looking for new books and new directions. Lovely.
So what is it like being a fashion writer? But I don't know what a fashion writer is, so if you could
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was my career before I started doing the books. I was a fashion editor, which meant that I worked for newspapers like the Sunday Star Times, and I was the editor of a magazine called Style, and I was the editor-at-large of Fashion Quarterly, and I had a fashion website as well called Runway Reporter that I started up. And it was a fantastic job. I really, really loved it. It was kind of a move from, I was just a general features writer and a journalist, and I decided I would focus more on fashion because it was kind of my specialist area of knowledge, and I loved it. And I think that's really important with all of your writing. I mean, always write about what you know and what you love, and then, you can just add to your knowledge all the time. So for me as a fashion writer, I would do things like go to fashion shows, interview designers. I would travel around the world to places like Paris and London, going to the collections, and it was really fun, and I really enjoyed it. And I don't do it at all anymore. I just do the books, and I would have to say, if I had to make a choice, I would much rather do what I do now, because the fantastic thing about writing my books is that I get to go out to schools and talk to kids, and I really love working in a way that is kind of encouraging young people to read and writing these stories that I think are really good for kids and inspiring and aspirational. And I feel very lucky that I had two careers that I really enjoyed, and I still would pick the one that I'm doing now.
Wow. So did that answer your question, Anna? Great, thank you. So does anybody else have another question for Stacey? Mira, you ask another one.
Do you have a favourite horse?
Do I have a favourite horse? Well, my favourite fictional horse would have to be Nightstorm from the Pony Club Secrets series. I just, because that series is 13 books long, and you watch the trajectory of Izzy, who's the hero of the series, go right from the start through to the end when she's in the Grand Slam with Nightstorm. And Nightstorm in my mind is just like, I love Baze, and he's just the superstar colt, and she just has such an amazing career with him. And to me, my characters are very real, so I kind of feel like Nightstorm's a real horse. And that's the series that has just been made into a TV series, and it's called Mystic, and that's screening at the moment in the UK on the BBC, and it will screen here in New Zealand at the end of August. And so he would be my favourite fictional horse. And then my favourite real life horse actually resembles Nightstorm quite a lot. He is our horse, Cam. He belongs to my daughter, but I ride him a lot because she's always working. And he is super cool and super handsome, and he's really talented, and he's fantastic to ride, and he's really good company. So he's my favourite real life horse, and Nightstorm's my favourite fictional one.
What was the first book you wrote?
Oh, the first book I wrote was Mystic and the Midnight Ride, which is the first book in the Pony Club Secrets series, and that is the one that the TV series is based on. The TV series is called Mystic because of him. And the book series, though, was called Pony Club Secrets. And I think they're reissuing the Pony Club Secrets books in conjunction with the TV series this August, which is really cool because those books, were really special because they were the first ones I wrote.
Finally, do you have another question? They've already been answered. Okay, does anybody have any others that you could think of? Any questions? No, you've covered so much. It's been so amazingly interesting. Thank you very much for joining us, or for us joining you. It's a good way to do it.
Thanks for doing that.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Not sure whether to clap you or just say we look forward to your series coming.
Yeah,
I wonder if Stacey might like to do another short reading to close on, or is that too much?
Well, yeah, absolutely I can. There's let me take it from when the Dr. Rao has got into the stables and Zofia is hiding in the stall next to Prince underneath a horse rug because now the Nazis are there and she has no escape. So the voice was that of Dr. Rao. This is him then, the one you told me about. The colonel cleared his throat. Yes, Dr. Rao, this is Prince of Poland. He is purebred Polish-Arabian, descended from the very best bloodlines that we possess here at Janel Podlaski. He is the finest horse in these stables. Dr. Rao gave a hollow laugh. You are being arrogant, Colonel. You dare to tell me which is your best horse? Such decisions are mine to make and mine alone. This is why the Führer appointed me. This is why he gave me my title, Master of Horses. You understand what it means? I meant no insult, the Colonel stammered. I simply meant that I think him to be my best horse. Your best horse. The Master turned this phrase over slowly on his tongue. He is not your best horse, Colonel. He is not your horse at all. None of them are yours. I come here tonight on the instructions of Hitler himself. These horses belong to the Führer now. They are to play their part in his plan for the glory of the Third Reich. I'm sorry, Dr. Rao. The Colonel sounded confused. I don't understand. I thought you were coming to inspect the stud farm. What is this plan that you speak of? Ah, the Master almost purred with pleasure to be in possession of such top-secret information that the Colonel clearly didn't know. You're aware, Colonel, that the German army have made it part of their mission as a conquering nation to secure the very best artworks in the world. In our hands now are masterpieces by Raphael, Rubens, and many more. They are works of such great beauty, the Führer demands that we ensure they be taken by the SS and kept in secret to ensure that when the war ends, they will belong to Germany. But these are horses, the Colonel objected. They are not priceless paintings or sculptures. Yes, Dr. Rao replied. Horses are an even greater treasure. They are living, breathing art. Beneath her rug in the corner, Zofia saw Dr. Rao shuffle his feet in the straw and take a step closer towards Prince. He had his gloved hand on Prince's halter. Zofia's heart was pounding. This horse, Prince of Poland, has all the traits of the Aryan race. In time, he will be pure white like his father, and his bloodlines are impeccable. The Master hesitated, seemingly unsure as to whether he should unfold his whole plan to the Colonel, but was unable to resist, and so he continued. As we speak, my men are gathering together the very best horses in the whole of Europe. Lipizzaners from Austria, thoroughbreds from France, and now from Poland we take these Arabians. All of them are a part of the Führer's grand scheme, for it is not just the humans, the Aryan race, who will bring glory to the Third Reich. We will also create a new super breed of horses. The horses in your stables will be moved to Dresden, and here we will open a new stud farm with all the very best stallions and the very best mares from every breed. We will combine these horses and create the perfect, ultimate war horse. And that's where I will leave you.
Wonderful, thank you. So,
There's still actually a statue of Dr. Rao in a small town in Germany, which I find remarkable because I think it's kind of acknowledged that he was at the forefront of horse breeding, but he was also an incredible Nazi sympathiser. So I think they might want to re-examine their position on that. And certainly he vigorously helped them to achieve their goals, whether he was completely down with the Nazi party or not. It's, you know, it's an interesting quandary.
yes, yeah, fascinating. Okay, so a very big thank you from all of us, and we look forward to the future as well, because there'll be more. We're enjoying already what you've shown us and told us. Yes.
Oh yeah, I have a new one coming out in October, The Forever Horse, which I think you girls will really love, and that one is set in Paris and in the Camargue in the south of France and in London. So that's going to be I'm really excited about that one. I hope you enjoy it too.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, girls. Good question.
Bye. Thank you.
Nice to meet you all. Thank you for that.
Thank you.